Picasso was out in a market in Europe and a lady walked up to him and says, "Oh my gosh, Picasso, please draw a portrait of me. Oh my gosh, it's so great to meet you." So Picasso grabs a napkin and a pen and draws this portrait of the woman in under a minute. And then he hands it to her and says, "That'll be 30,000 euros, please." And she was like, 30,000 euros? It didn't even take you 30 seconds or a minute to finish it. And Picasso responded, "No, ma'am, it took me 30 years to learn to do that in 30 seconds. So it's about the purpose, the mission behind the story, or the actual message behind the story is that it's not about the time that you're spending there. It's about everything that you've done to be able to support your clients during that time, right? Welcome to the Chingona Revolution podcast, where we will bring out your inner badass Latina, overcome self-doubt, help you gain clarity, and pave your own path, all while leading with courage. I am your host, Latina coach and speaker, Erica Cruz. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Chingona Revolution podcast. On today's episode, I have two guests who are people that I admire, but they are also my clients. And if you've noticed, the guests that I bring onto this podcast are typically either clients or friends of mine, and it's because I really do admire my clients. I have some of the best clients in the world, and they inspire me, and I'm sure that I inspire them, and it just becomes this uplifting cycle of seeing one another, cheering one another on, and really just showing up as the best version of ourselves because we are surrounded by such incredible, incredible people. And first, I'll introduce Cande, who's actually been on the podcast before. Cande and I have worked together one-on-one. Cande has all the certifications. She's like Reiki certified. She's like gone to Hawaii to do certain courses, as well as India. And she is a cycle breaker. She is the rebel child. She is the one who's really just trailblazing, and it takes so much courage to do that. But today, what I want to talk to her about, as well as our other guest, is how it was that she ended up finding her purpose. How do you find your path whenever society and your family and culture is giving you all of these other alternative paths that are nicely paved, right? So like, I want you all to imagine that society and your family and culture are giving you these paths that have cement on them and little handrails so you can hold on. And then there's little signs. It's like, go this way. But yet Cande decided, oh, let me just like get off of this trail and go into the forest and like, yeah, I'm going to get lost, but I'm going to end up finding this magical trail there's unicorns, and I don't know, that's how I'm envisioning it in my mind right now, right? It's like a rainbow trail that she ends up finding, but it took her going through the mud to get there. So Cande, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I just went on a rant already, and then we'll introduce our other guest.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Candelaria, but I go by Cande. My last name is González. I am a Latina blogger and life coach. My blog is called Siempre Evolving, and it is all about self-development, spirituality, and positive growth for the conscious Latina. So just like Erica said, it has taken me quite a while to get to this point of living my purpose. I have never been happier. I've never felt more fulfilled, and it has taken a lot, but I will start with that.
And you are also a dog mom.
I am a dog mom and a homeowner, so I'm navigating those two things right now on my own. I am single, and yeah, I'm enjoying this part of this stage of my life.
Ooh, okay. I already want to get into the interview, but remind me to ask you about how you're not in the place you thought you would be in your life, but yet you're very content with where you are, right? Because I just recorded a birthday episode where I talked about how 10 years ago, I never expected that I'd be where I am, but I'm also so happy that I am where I am. And yet when we're in the thick of it, we're like, why am I not there yet? And then we get there and we're like, oh, wait, no, everything in divine timing. Like, this is exactly how it was supposed to go. Okay, here Erica goes, going on rants. Our second guest is Tatiana. And Tatiana, we've started working together since you joined Courage Driven Latina. I know that you are a somatic therapist as well as coach, and you're building your wellness practice, and you are an incredible content creator. You create such engaging content. Tell us who you are and a little bit more about what you do.
Sure. So I'm Tatiana. I'm a trauma and somatic therapist, as well as a holistic coach. And I specialize in helping women regulate their nervous systems so that they can feel their most authentic selves and finally live a life outside of survival mode. And I'm also a pet mom. I have a dog and a cat. And yeah, that's a little bit about who I am.
Amazing. And we're going to learn so much more about you during this episode. And before we started recording, you two were kind of chatting. I don't think I consciously made the decision to invite you both on. And I don't think I realized what I was doing when I invited you both on the podcast. But you two have really been able to be great support systems for one another. And lately, I've had so many conversations about the importance of community and how it's difficult to find an aligned community is what I've heard from people. And then a lot of people also have the sisterhood wound, right? Where maybe they've been burned by friends, or maybe friends don't cheer them on, but rather bring them down. So can Tatiana, we'll start with you. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your journey to finding community? And then we'll get into the actual podcast episode. But I just had to start with this because you two were talking about this before we recorded.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like I've always struggled with finding community. And I think this goes back to, again, just, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but connecting with my cultural identity. I felt like I didn't really connect with the Colombian side of me or the Guatemalan side of me. And I felt like I really struggled with trying to find where I fit in. And then I also didn't feel white enough, right? Like I wasn't American enough. I wasn't so I struggled significantly trying to find my tribe. And honestly, I feel like I'm still trying to find my people. I'm trying to find my tribe. And I think, as I got older and I started my healing process, I really realized that I was kind of outgrowing a lot of the relationships that stemmed from trauma, really, right? Like stemmed from like my unresolved wounds. And so as I started healing, I started to realize that I really wanted people who were on the same page as me, who were wanting to grow with me and grow personally and professionally and wanted to work on their mental health and make healthy decisions and all of that. So I think it's been, my entire life trying to navigate relationships and, growing up, I've also experienced a lot of trauma. And so that definitely has impacted just the way that I relate to people and develop healthy relationships. So it's been a journey. And I feel like I'm at this place now, especially joining CDL, where I not only am connecting with women who can relate to me culturally, but also who are working on themselves personally and professionally. And that's exactly what I've been looking for. And yeah, I feel like I'm still in it. I'm still in the journey of trying to connect with people and find that community and find that tribe.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. I love that you mentioned that sometimes we attract people into our lives based on our unhealed trauma. So it makes so much sense that once you begin healing, you outgrow friends. That makes so much sense. Gande, what about for you? You've had to reinvent your circle many times, from moving to different places and almost just creating a new identity for yourself in different parts of your life. What has that been like for you to create a conscious community around you?
Oh my goodness. Yes, it's been such a journey and process. And one thing that came to mind as soon as you asked that is even the journey with my name, with having the name Candelaria here in the United States, an English speaking country. Growing up, actually, when I started school, I spoke Spanish, right? I was in ESL classes and stuff. So I was blessed enough to be with classmates who looked like me, and they were all like little Mexican kids like me, for the most part. So I was blessed to grow up with kids that looked like me. But then as I got older and then I moved to another state, my dad moved the family to Pennsylvania when I was in high school. That's when I started being surrounded by classmates that didn't look like me. And also when I started in fourth grade, I had my first Caucasian teacher, and I was with English speaking kids. And that's when I got the nickname Candy. People started calling me Candy. And it stuck for the rest of my adult life, basically. And I always hated it, but I kept it because I've always thought about other people and feeling like, oh, it's going to be easy for them. So at one point when I moved to Charlotte, I moved here 7 years ago for a relationship. When I moved here, I even changed my nickname to Ria, the last 3 letters of my name, which I don't even know what I was thinking at this point, but yeah, reinventing my circles and meeting different people. It has been such a process, but it has always been a very important part of my life. And I want to also note that when I was in my relationship, I ended up getting engaged. It was a 7-year relationship. I was engaged for 2 years. I lost a part of myself there. And that's where I stopped focusing on my friends, not intentionally, because sometimes we lose ourselves in a relationship, right? But then after ending the relationship, now that's when I started intentionally making friends again, especially here in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where I moved. And now I'm growing my network and my circle. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to join CDL, to have that sacred hour every week to focus on my personal development, surrounded by like-minded Latinas just like me that are driven and all of that, So yeah, it's been a process. I've met people in different places. When I lived in Hawaii, when I lived in India, when I went to college in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, but I feel like that's always been a really important part of my life. And that's why I love groups like this. But even if they're virtual, they still are very impactful.
Yeah, because you two haven't met in person. Mm-hmm. Have you?
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
But you've been able to support one another tremendously throughout both of your journeys. So we'll get into that later. Okay, so let's talk about purpose, right? Purpose is this big word that people are out on a hunt for. And they think, oh, once I find it, it's just there it is. Everything's good. But aligning with your purpose is actually quite a journey. It's a lot of trial and error. It's actually not something that you go and find, but rather something that you step into. And everything that we've done in the past becomes a part of our purpose and a part of our journey. And it helps us get to where we want to go. And using myself as an example, I worked in the tech industry for 8 years. Obviously, I'm no longer working in the tech industry, but without that background, I wouldn't have the business and the brand and I wouldn't be the person that I am today. So when we think about your purpose and when we think about how you had to try a few things before getting to this place, Cande, we're going to start with you. What were some of the things that you did to get to your purpose? And again, this isn't like a destination, right? It's something that's going to keep evolving, and it's a journey, right? Because your purpose is something that is a lifelong thing. So how have you gotten to where you are now? Because I feel like you're in a great place. What did you have to try? What did you have to learn? And where are you now?
Yes. So for most of my life, I always knew that I wanted to just do something different. I wanted to make a positive impact somehow and to help people. So even in college, I graduated with a sociology degree. And I thought that the best way to go about, helping people was to work in nonprofits and to, take that route, which I tried, and I did work in different nonprofits, getting overworked and underpaid, leading to burnout. I never stayed at the same job for more than 3 years, to be honest. And after I even at one point in Pennsylvania, I got my real estate license because I thought I wanted to try real estate, and I put myself out there in that sense. Then I went to India and got my yoga and meditation teacher certification because I was very into that spirituality aspect. And also yoga is just very, very healing. And I love the mind body part of it, but I never used it because of imposter syndrome. I got scared, so I was trying different things. I was getting certifications in Hawaii. I got my Reiki certifications, but I never used those either in terms of having clients or using them. Imposter syndrome got in the way a lot. And yes, so then once I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, I also worked in nonprofits or other jobs where I was just trying to help people. I worked at a free clinic, also leading to burnout. I was just trying to help people. It was more of a ministry. That was just a place that I ended up working. But eventually I realized that I wanted to share everything that I've learned in my own personal development journey as a Latina. Because I feel like when I was in those spaces, like when I went to live in a retreat center in Hawaii, or even when I went to India, like I was the only Latina in those spaces. And it just felt like, why aren't there more of us in places like this, you know? Same with even some of my other interests that I started in being a part of, like hiking or camping, or I don't know, things like that, like or running even. I wanted to have people do things like that too, where we all care about our health as well, because that matters as well, you know, and just like not being the only one or whatever. So I wanted to share all of that. It started feeling heavier in my heart, because I want to mention too that growing up, my parents are they're very reserved and like keep to themselves, and that stopped me a lot for a long time from putting myself out there. So eventually it was very heavy. It was very almost like obvious that I wanted to do this, but I needed to just get out of my own way and push myself. And no, like that was a work. That was a hard part of finally getting tired of my own stuff. And that's when I created my blog. So I felt that was going to be the best way at the time, because I wasn't ready to show my face. So I even remember posting my about me picture where I was looking to the side, because I didn't even want to show my face yet. Like I just didn't want to be seen. I was scared of being seen and heard, but I felt like there was a deeper part of me that wanted to share everything that I've learned to help Latinas, to help first-gen Latinas, or just like women in general. And eventually with time, I created my Instagram page, and I started overcoming the fear of being seen and heard, because inside I realized that is my purpose, you know, that I'm here to do big things and to help other Latinas to also find their not only to find their purpose, but to also find a way to express themselves. Like self-expression is really important, you know? So I feel like eventually, like you just have to get out of your own way. It's in your heart for a reason, you know? So eventually, like that's how I've gotten to this point. And just like you mentioned, it's evolving. So who knows where this will
go.
How
on brand.
Exactly.
What's
and that's
the name
kind
of
of what
blog?
Yeah, Siempre Evolving. And that's also why I chose that name, because I was like, okay, we're always going to evolve, you know? So, and from that too, like, who knows, like what topics I will talk about later on. And I'll still have the same name, you know, it'll make sense. So,
exactly. Yeah. I love the name. I just want to touch on a couple of things that you said. So you mentioned that you knew you wanted to help people, and the path that you knew was nonprofit. And no shade to nonprofit. Like I think nonprofits really do change the world, and anybody who works a nonprofit, you are definitely overworked, and we appreciate you so much for everything that you do. But when I was in college, I remember the same thing. I was like, oh, I'm going to go work for a nonprofit because I want to help people. And it was almost like the only option that we saw. And again, no shade to nonprofit, but there's so many ways of helping. And what you're doing now through creating content and going live every Wednesday, all the value that you're giving the people who follow you without even having to be your client, that is a form of nonprofit work as well, right? This podcast is, right? As people are sitting here listening to us. So I you know, for Latinas, I think we're just there's almost this tunnel vision of just because we're not exposed to that many opportunities, right? We think we need to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or a teacher, right? Or a secretary. Like it's so limited. And like, oh, if you want to go help people, go work in nonprofit. But I think the reason that we don't know what our purpose is from the time that we're younger is that there's just so many things out there. Like if we think about the children today, when they're in the workforce, there's going to be jobs that didn't even exist, right? Can you imagine like a TikTok marketing manager? That didn't even exist before 2020. New jobs are always being created. So this narrative of like, oh, you have to know what you need to do, like what you want to do or your purpose, it's unhelpful, because just like we as individuals are siempre evolving, so is the world and the workforce and the way in humanity, right? We're all evolving and so much is changing. But I truly believe that you wouldn't be the coach that you are today, Cande, without the experiences that you've had, right? Without the yoga teacher training, without the mindfulness, the yoga, the mind-body connection. And it makes you this incredible coach that can help people. So
and let's include also the heartbreak and relationship stuff too, like life stuff. That's also a part of it as well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Amazing. Thank you. Okay, Tatiana, how about you? So the question to remind you is tell us how you found your purpose or your purpose at this moment. What did you try before getting to this place? What worked, what didn't work, and tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. So I would say similar to Cande, I always knew that I wanted to help people, but I think for me, so I went into college majoring in psychology, and then eventually I ended up double majoring in human development and family studies. But I went into college I always had the idea of I want to help kids. So I wanted to be a child therapist. I wanted to help kids never feel what I felt as a child. So I was really going in wanting to help, but also wanting to understand myself because I wanted to understand why I was experiencing certain feelings. I wanted to understand why I was resilient, even though I wasn't using the word resilient at the time, but I wanted to understand why like I could do certain things and think a certain way in the way that I was doing it. And I had just made the decision I want to help kids and this is what I'm going to do. And then I never looked back. But it did change a little bit over the years. I went in as a psychology major. I ended up double majoring with human development family studies like I mentioned, and then I was like I am going to do all of the internships. So I started trying to just like get in the door. And I remember my first internship. This is kind of wild. It's a little embarrassing to say, but the first internship that I had was at a residential facility for adolescents. And I remember I came in and I was wearing my best outfit. I was wearing heels and I was definitely overdressed for the position. And I remember like going into it, I was like, yeah, I'm ready for this internship. I don't care if I'm not going to get paid. I'm going to dress like I own the place. And and now looking back, I'm like, yeah, maybe I was a little overdressed. But after that, I just like started dipping my toes and like trying to see like what I liked. So I definitely like to work with the higher risk adolescents and like the kids with anger management issues, the kids who were diagnosed with like ODD, who were getting suspended every day. Like that was my population. I really enjoyed working with those kids. But also looking back, I was also living in survival mode. So I was in this sympathetic state. So I had a higher tolerance to work with this population. So not only did I understand them, but I had a higher tolerance because I was living off of stress hormones. And yeah, so I had a lot of internships. I went into getting my master's in mental health counseling. I, again, only wanted to do child therapy. I only wanted to work with kids and teenagers. And then I remember I got my first adult client. And when I worked at an agency, you don't get to choose who you get to work with. So they just give you the clients and you get supervision around them. And that's that. You can't like in private practice, you get to choose who you want to work with. And even as like in coaching, right? Like you get to choose who you want to work with. And I got my first adult client and I was like, I told my supervisor, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to work with adults. This is not like why I came into this for. And I got supervision around it. Eventually, I learned that I really enjoyed working with adults. And then I was like, oh, okay, like I could get a little bit more clients who are adults. And then eventually I started doing like more meditation and mind body practices with these clients. And then I got into somatic experiencing and I learned that I really loved somatic work and I loved working with the nervous system. And so now that's all I do. I don't really do a lot of talk therapy. I only do somatic work, and I only work with adults. I don't work with kids anymore. And mostly because there's just a lot that goes in to working with children and adolescents. But yeah, I feel like I would say I'm a very decisive person and I would say I'm also pretty intuitive. And so when I kind of like set my mind to something and it feels right in my body, I'm like, yes, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not looking back. And then there were like some bumps in the road getting to where I am today, but I always knew that my purpose was to work with other people and help people heal and not feel, sad, and not feel like they're stuck, and not feel like they can't conquer the world, because I honestly believe that everybody, but I only work with women, every women can conquer the world, right? Like, you have the power to do anything. And so, yeah, I feel like my purpose, I guess, has changed a little bit over the years, but it's still under the same umbrella of wanting to support people and wanting to just heal more nervous systems, right? Like, I wasn't saying that when I was 18 years old as an
Of course.
undergrad, right? But now I'm like, yes, let's heal all nervous systems so everybody can just feel good in their bodies and be kinder. The world can be a kinder place.
Definitely. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I love how you both have such different journeys and different stories. I'm glad that you're both on the same podcast because people are going to resonate with Cande, people are going to resonate with Tatiana. Tatiana, you mentioned something that at the beginning that I want to highlight. You said that you don't want kids to experience what you did. And a lot of times, as we're looking for our purpose and what it is that we want to do in life, a lot of times our pain does become our purpose, right? We overcome a struggle or we overcome pain, and then we want to help other people navigate that as well. And another thing that people can look out for is what gets you angry, what upsets you. And I recently wrote an email about how when growing up in my family, I grew up in a Mexican household, and my brother always played soccer and my dad was the soccer coach. And I asked my parents to put me on a soccer team, and they just didn't. They didn't have the bandwidth to take me to soccer practice if my brother was also playing soccer, especially because my dad was the coach. And there was just so many circumstances in my life where I was treated differently because I was a woman, because I was a girl, and culturally that was just normal. But that upset me so much at a young age that had I not had those experiences, I don't think I would have the brand that I have now, which is all about empowering women and showing them that they could do things without needing a man's approval. And so a lot of times, yeah, the pain equals our purpose, as well as anger. All of these are clues. All of these are clues to what it is that we want to do. And if we really look at the big picture, you both knew what you wanted to do. You just didn't know how it was going to happen. And you can't know the how because of what we just talked about earlier, where things are constantly evolving and changing. So you're not going to know the context. And a lot of times things turn out better than you could even imagine. And there's so much magic in that. So let me look at my next question. Why do you think it's important for people to follow their purpose? We'll start with you, Tatiana.
Why do I think it's important for people to follow their purpose? That's a good question. I would say that, to live a fulfilling life, right? Like, to live a life that feels fulfilling and intentional. And I think that there are so many people who are living their everyday lives on autopilot, right? And they hate their jobs, and they maybe hate their lives. And once you can access that purpose, or create that purpose, or find that purpose, or whatever it is, right? Like, you can really start living your life in the way that you want to live it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Cande, what about you? Why do you think it's important for people to follow their purpose?
I think it's important for people to follow their purpose because I believe that everyone has gifts and talents. I feel like we are all born to help each other or to just make an impact with each other. And by following your purpose, you're sharing your light with the world. So it's not even just about yourself. It's about the world. It's about everybody else, So when you follow your purpose, you start naturally feeling better about your life, about yourself, the way that you show up in the world. And that is a trickle effect with everyone else, with your circle. And then that gives them permission to do the same. And then they start doing the same. And it's just like a light that is created, you know, like in the world. So I think it's that deep. So I feel like that's why it's important for everyone to follow their purpose. It's going to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And for those of you listening, if you've listened to all my podcast episodes and you already know my purpose story, but to give you all a little bit of context, I remember being working in the tech industry and I knew that it wasn't the place I was going to end up. And I read all the books on purpose. I took courses on purpose. I was searching for this thing. And I started off in the tech industry right after university, and I started off in sales, and then I moved to partnerships, and then I worked in marketing, and then I worked in product, and then I went back to marketing. So, I mean, all of these different types of jobs. And throughout this time, I was like, what is my thing? And I started a food blog, and then I went to I got my yoga teacher certification. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to be the Latina yoga instructor. That's my thing. And then in 2020, all the yoga studios closed. So it forced me to pivot and redirect. And the big thing that I learned through yoga, which Cande, I think you can relate, was the beauty and the importance of mindfulness. And to your point, the mind body connection. And that was the approach I then took. And TikTok had just kind of kicked off. So I started to create videos on TikTok, first on yoga. And then I even tried the food thing because I still kind of had the food blog. And then the videos that really took off were the ones of me sharing everything about self-development, mindfulness, and my experience as a first-generation Latina. And that was kind of what led me to doing what I'm doing now. But just this weekend, two of my friends were visiting me here in LA, and they asked me what I did in tech, and I started telling them. And I don't think I had ever connected the dots, but I was already doing a lot of what I'm doing now in the tech industry. So not only did I start doing weekly yoga classes for my company where I was the yoga instructor, but then we would also do these bake-offs. So I would also bake at work. It was like I really brought my passions to work. And my company realized, okay, Erica obviously she's a people person, right? She's not an engineer. So I ended up doing a bunch of client interviews. I mean, and now I run a podcast, right? But then the other thing is I would do the voiceovers and I would create the stories for our products and I would create videos. And it's like, yeah, it all transfers over. Like this all makes sense. It's like I've almost been doing this type of work in those jobs, but I couldn't connect the dots in that moment. So I just want to point out to a lot of the people, well, to everybody listening that are watching, that we cannot, Steve Jobs says this, we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect the dots looking back. So we never realize exactly what the experiences that we are having in this moment are helping us do for the future. So Cande, for you, that was, like everything that you learned through your yoga teacher training, and even just seeing like, okay, I'm the only person who looks like me in these rooms, meaning I need to bring more people into this space. And you, Tatiana, being exposed to your first client who was an adult and you were like resistant to it, but then in the end, it was exactly what you ended up doing, right? So just wanted to quickly share that for everybody listening. Let's see, what other questions? Can you believe we've already been recording for 33 minutes? That like flew by. That totally flew by. Okay, Cande, I'm curious. Obviously, we've been working together for a while, so I know your story pretty well. How do you show up when things aren't going your way?
When things aren't going my way, it's tough sometimes because like I know that recently too, you started talking about your cycle, right? Like how that affects us too, right? So when things aren't going my way, I have to and I'm similar to you, I'm a big proponent of journaling. So I have to release my thoughts and I have to just let it out somehow, like have different outlets. So journaling is a main one. Same with just going outside in nature, like spending time in nature and just like lately I've been being more compassionate with myself, like giving myself grace, because in the beginning I was very, very hard on myself. I was very like strict with myself and just the way I was showing up at my jobs, in my life, basically, like I was pretty black and white. And this year actually has been the first time in my life where I've intentionally have been changing that. So I don't want to be black and white anymore. I want to be more of like, in the gray area in some parts of my life, right? But when things are not going the way that I want them to, I still like push myself to show up, but it might be in a different way. So I sometimes am vulnerable with my audience. So I'm mainly on Instagram, right? So that helps a lot too. I feel like that makes me relatable. So in the beginning, I was scared to do that because I just felt like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be judged or something, right? Like just starting to doubt yourself or question things. But just showing that side of you, that is what makes you relatable. And people, that's sometimes that is what helps my audience like connect with me even more on a deeper level. And that's when I get more messages sometimes, and I don't even do it with that intention of like, oh, let me pretend like I'm going through, like it's genuine and people feel that. Like I know you talk about spirituality a lot as well. So it's the energy that you give out. So just like sharing all parts of you is important, and continuing to just show up, because at the end of the day, I ask myself why. Like I always do everything with an intention. So whenever I want to show up, if I'm like, I always ask myself like, what is my intention for this, because I don't want to do it from a forceful place tampoco. So like that's when I decided like, okay, like let me go like share a vulnerable like post or something or story or whatever, so like just having that intention in mind is what helps me.
Yeah. I love it. I love that you talked about intention and the bigger why and overall like your purpose, right? I think when we don't have a bigger purpose that we're working towards, then it's a lot easier to give up. And Jay Shetty has said this in the past. I actually took his course on purpose. And for context, the group that you're both in, that you've both referred to as CDL, Courage Driven Latina, used to be Purpose Driven Latina. And because of a trademark issue, we ended up changing it. And the reason we changed it was because it's one thing to identify your purpose or have clarity on your purpose. But then going after your purpose is what requires so much courage. So that's why we changed that. But a big part of the program is helping you all find clarity on what you want to do and how you want to do it, right? So, but Jay Shetty says that your passions are for you and your purpose is for others. So your purpose is for the world. And if we look at that kind of in, like, I'll share an example. I believe that my purpose is Courage Driven Latina. My purpose is this podcast. And it's still, I'm passionate about them, but it's more for, I'm more passionate about helping my community, right? And giving back to my community. And these are just the ways that I do it. But a passion for me would be like, well, dancing. You all know I've been learning to dance and I've been going pretty consistently and I've been sharing my journey. And I think people love seeing the journey, to your point, Cande, that people don't just want to see us already at our final place, because I get more messages about dancing now than other things. They're like, oh my gosh, you're so good now. Or like, I've loved watching you evolve to like where you've gotten to now. And I even have one of my first podcast episodes, I'm talking about my first bachata class and how it was a disaster. And like, I didn't know what I was doing or where to put my hand. And I ended up scratching some guy in the nose and in the eye. Like, it was just so bad. And I could have just not gone back, but I kept going back. And that was just another example of something that wasn't going my way. But Cande, I think you said this as well, like the expression, the creative expression is so important. And that's exactly what I'm doing with dance. So, all right, I just went on a whole rant there. Tatiana, how do you continue to show up when things aren't going your way?
Yeah. Whew. So it's hard because things don't go my way a lot of the time. And I am a very impatient person. But I think it goes back to regulating my nervous system, right? And coming back to why, similar to what the two of you were saying, right? Coming back to the bigger picture, like, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to reach this goal? And I can't reach that goal if I'm not feeling good, if I'm not feeling regulated, right? And so I think that often when things aren't going my way, I can get stuck in these like, I gotta get here, I gotta get here, I gotta get here. Why isn't it happening, right? And so it's like, okay, taking that pause, rewinding, let's do a nervous system reset, let's meditate, let's do something somatic, right? To get me back to a place where I'm feeling a little bit more connected and grounded so that I can look at the bigger picture. Why am I doing this? And then also regulating my nervous system helps me go back to discipline, right? So even if we're not seeing results, I need to show up because these small steps are going to get me to that bigger goal that I want to get to, right? But I think that for me, I try to like meditate every day. I try to like do something somatic every day to feel balanced, to feel regulated. And I try not to get stuck in those thoughts or beliefs of like why I'm not reaching my goal or why things aren't going the way that I want them to go. So, yeah, I think it goes back to regulating the nervous system and discipline and remembering that all the things that I'm doing right now in this moment are going to get me to that bigger goal.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so before we started recording, I had pulled up both of your entry surveys before joining the program, and I read to you what it was that you were struggling with just a couple of months ago, right? It hasn't been very long. And I want to read them back to you, and I want you to tell me what is different. Have things gotten better? What has helped? So, Tatiana, we'll start with you because I have yours open. So, you said that you're currently struggling with cultural identity, community support, and then business related ideas. And what you said is, I'm currently in the process of connecting more with my culture and struggling significantly with my Hispanic identity, considering I was born in the United States. I'm Colombian and Guatemalan, and I feel like I have never been Colombian enough or Guatemalan enough or even American enough. So I'm really looking for a strong sense of community with other Latinas who are striving to become better versions of themselves. I also love that our focus will be on to do a courage project for the entire year. And I will now turn it back to you. So how do you feel about your cultural identity? What has helped? Is it better? Is it not better? And what has contributed?
Yeah, it is way better. Way better. Just being in the space of, you know, Latina women, like I think so. I haven't had a lot of Hispanic friends. And so I've always just kind of had, so like my husband's Polish, so he's not Hispanic either, right? And so I'm surrounded by non-Hispanic people all of the time. And so it was a lot of that was contributing to not feeling connected to my culture. And so really just being in the space of CDL, just knowing that everybody there or almost everybody there is Hispanic, like it has really helped. And I think the energy is different. I think there's something about Latina women, right, that like we have this different energy. And I don't know how to explain it, but you can feel it. And I think, when I started connecting with different members of CDL individually, I felt it. I felt like, wow, I can relate. And it's not even because we're doing the same thing, but it's just the energy. And I feel like they get it. And I feel like I can see myself in them and they can see myself in me or themselves in me. Yeah. And as a side note, I met with Cande individually, and I feel like just having this conversation with her, I shared with her that I didn't feel Hispanic enough or Colombian enough or Guatemalan enough, right? And I had this conversation with her, and she said, "But you are. You are Hispanic, right? Like you are Latina." So I was like, yeah, I am. Like, I am. Why wouldn't I feel like there's no definition around what being a Latina is, right? Like, I
Oh, good.
am Latina and I don't have to explain myself, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think I do feel more connected to my cultural identity. And it's definitely a work in progress. Like, I recently started taking Spanish classes and I speak Spanish, but I just don't feel comfortable speaking in Spanish because of my American accent. And so, like, I understand everything, but I'm like, no, I want to take Spanish classes so that I can really feel comfortable speaking fluently and not have to worry about my American accent. So, just taking those small steps, I'm like, yeah, like, I feel like I've been in Courage Driven Latina for years. It's only been, what, 3 months?
Yes. Lovely. And you bring up such a good point where there is no definition of what it's like to be Latina. And I think perhaps what was happening before joining Courage Driven Latina, when you weren't exposed to a lot of other Latinas, you maybe had this narrative or a story you were telling yourself of what it meant to be Latina. But I think being in a room of, yeah, Latinas, but everyone is from different backgrounds. They live in different states. They have different family dynamics. Some people are the eldest, some people are the youngest, right? So we just see such a diversity of people. We have people in the program who speak half English, half Spanish. And then we have people who don't speak Spanish, and that's totally okay. We have people who are third generation, and there's no right or wrong way to be Latina. And I think being in spaces like this almost gives you permission to claim the identities, because Tatiana, you are all of the above. You are Colombian, Guatemalan, and American, right? Like, it's not enough. It's like you get to be all of them. And how beautiful is that you have access to all of these different cultures, and not to diminish your experience growing up where it kind of felt like you couldn't find your place. But now, as an adult, you get to create your own place. And how beautiful is that? Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cande, when you did your entry survey for Courage Driven Latina, you said that what you are struggling with is showing up on social media consistently and sharing your coaching offer, aka growing your coaching business. Tell us what has changed over the last few months since joining the program.
When I think about it, I almost feel like, wow, it's insane how all it takes is a simple mind shift. So Tatiana actually, and it's funny how you said that you didn't purpose, like intentionally put us in this episode for a particular reason, and I thought that you did because of how much we both have helped each other since we have, like met on our individual time or whatever. But Tatiana inspired me to post consistently because she did a 30-day posting challenge, like for herself, like to grow her Instagram page. So when we met individually, actually Tatiana reached out to me because she wanted to collaborate. So we ended up doing an Instagram live together. But when we met and talked about our, journeys for the first time to each other, I complimented her content because she's so good at it. And I'm like, I see you showing up like every day, or like all the time. I didn't know it was every day, And when she told me that she just wanted to focus on 30 days, I was like, how come I didn't think of that? Because I've had my Instagram now for over a year, and I have been struggling. I mentioned earlier how my parents have been really reserved, and I don't know if that's part of it as well, of still feeling that fear of being seen and heard. But when Tatiana said that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, let me try that. So I literally that Sunday, I made the decision after meeting with her during the week. And then by that next Monday, I started my 30-day posting challenge, and I did do it. And it was crazy how that's all it took, to just focus on a smaller goal instead of being overwhelmed and feeling like, oh my gosh, this is my whole life now, like I'm gonna have to post all the time or whatever, which is basically what I was doing, and that's why I was resisting it so much. So when I did the 30-day posting challenge, which just ended last week, and I'm going to restart it again on November 1st, after next week, I grew my coaching business. I reached over 1,000 followers on Instagram, and I've already gotten results from just that month, so that's why I'm going to continue it. So since I already saw those results, I feel like my brain is like, okay, let's do it again, so I will. But yeah, so I feel like it already happened. So now when we met in one of our last CDL calls, my Courage project is changing now. So instead of focusing on that, I'm going to change it to, I wrote it down, but basically to focus on my, growing my business in a different way and organizing myself in a different way. But yeah, so it's that's checked off the list already. And it's only been 3 months, like Tatiana said, that I can't believe that it happened so fast.
Amazing. Yes. So as much as I like to be like, I'm a great coach, the reality is I'm just really good at bringing people together because the magic happens. Don't get me wrong. You all get coached inside of the coaching calls weekly, and you get coached inside of Slack. But I think a lot of magic happens when people help one another, and you get access to people like Tatiana, to people like Cande. There's people from all different walks of life. And 15 or 20 brains are always going to be so much better than just your own. And you two are able to help one another out because you are so close to your problems that you can't see the bigger picture, but you could see the bigger picture for the other person, or you could kind of call them out. So Tatiana, we'll start with you with this one. What has been maybe a piece of coaching that you've received inside of the program that has really stuck with you? Maybe a pivotal moment when you were like, oh man.
Yeah, I think probably the most recent one in our business call, where I was sharing my beliefs around money and my insecurities around money. And And you had offered a different perspective around money and charging people. And I was like, yeah, duh. Like, of course. And I think that like, I think it was maybe your reaction because I was like, oh, I'm charging this amount. And then you were like, okay. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yes.
I'm allowed
You
to charge that
explained it.
amount.
You explained why it was that amount, and Erica was just like, "Oh, I was gonna tell you that it needed to be more than X." You know, like it was like
Yeah.
no big deal.
Yeah.
So I remember
Yeah.
exactly what coaching session you're talking about. So yeah, we have monthly business calls inside of Courage Driven Latina where we talk strategy, where we talk money mindset, where we talk operations, technology, like anything that you need to run your business. And you too are working on courage projects that are business related. The next couple of people that I have on there working on projects that are life related. So I that's actually why I had paired you two. So Tatiana came to the call and she is growing her coaching business, moving away, or I don't know if you're moving away from private practice, but you're growing your coaching business so you can support people nationwide, right? So you're not limited to just your state. And she told me what the price was for working with her one-on-one. And before she told me her price, she was already getting really, really defensive and almost looking to justify the price. And when she told me the price, I was like, okay, great. Yeah, that sounds good. Like I was going to tell you to maybe charge a little bit more, but like that's a great place to start. And she was just so taken aback that that was my reaction because then Cande, you're right. We then talked about the Picasso story. So I'll tell everybody the Picasso story. So a lot of times when we think about setting a price for our services, or when we think about maybe like, we'll also make this relevant to people who don't have a business, maybe your salary at your job. A lot of times we're thinking like, oh, the amount of hours that we're spending in that job or performing the job. But it's so much more than that, right? Like Tatiana has years of experience, a lot of certifications, has done all the internships that she mentioned at the beginning of this episode. And I shared this Picasso story where this story has been told many times and I've heard it in different ways. So, I mean, what matters is the actual point of the story. But Picasso was out in a market in Europe and a lady walked up to him and says, "Oh my gosh, Picasso, please draw a portrait of me. Oh my gosh, it's so great to meet you." So Picasso grabs a napkin and a pen and draws this portrait of a woman in under a minute. And then he hands it to her and says, "That'll be 30,000 euros, please." And she was like, 30,000 euros? It didn't even take you 30 seconds or a minute to finish it. And Picasso responded, "No, ma'am, it took me 30 years to learn to do that in 30 seconds. So it's about the purpose, the mission behind the story, or the actual message behind the story is that it's not about the time that you're spending there. It's about everything that you've done to be able to support your clients during that time, right? Or if we're talking about your job, it's not just the 40 hours of work that you are working. It's of all the previous jobs you've had before them, your degree, your internships, all the times you've messed up that you've learned from them so that you don't mess up again, right? Or at least not that same mistake again. So cool. I'm glad. How about you, Cande? A moment of coaching when it was like an aha moment or that really like surprised you?
I feel like it was the last time you coached me when I asked about my courage project, because I was like, well, now I don't even know what it should be. And one of the last things that I said was and how you were telling me that it should be that it should be on like structuring my schedule. So then it's more, so I am more organized and can batch content and things like that, because lately, and ever since I started my business, I've been doing everything basically like last minute, with procrastination and like all of those things. And I still get things done, but I want to get to the point where I am more organized and everything's more flowy and more at ease instead of like stressing out over completing certain tasks and stuff. And one of the last things that came out of my mouth, I guess, or that I said was that I felt like it's not even a real business. And you were like, whoa, you gotta like what, because I haven't even gotten my LLC yet. And I guess in my mind, I was viewing it as like, this isn't even real yet for whatever reason, because I've been focusing, or I'm obviously still coaching and everything, but just because of that one thing, which I'm still proud of myself for doing everything that I've done, because people sometimes focus on things like on the actual like, LLC or the website or whatever. And it's like, no, so everybody listening, you could still coach and do your thing, without focusing on that first, right? But that was a moment of realization, because I was like, wow, am I like viewing it as not a real thing or whatever, and like that's what I've been that overcoming, I guess, or that was my major shift, that I'm like, okay, like let me work on that stuff. So that was a major moment. Yeah.
You had 100% re-sign rate. You just
Yeah.
brought on a new client. I mean, you've been helping your clients do some incredible things. And then because of a piece of paper, you're like, oh, this isn't a real business. Are we kidding? No, you literally have created money and business and transformation for people out of social media content and a blog. How, like 20 years ago, people would be like, no, there's no way you could do that, right? Because it wasn't possible then. So incredible. Let's see. Is there any other questions that I have for you too? I guess just this episode is coming out on Halloween. So happy Halloween to everyone. And then the next day I'm hosting a workshop all about procrastination to purpose. Hence why we talked about purpose today. And just because it's such an important aspect as well. But after the workshop, we're opening the doors for Courage Driven Latina, and you two are obviously in Courage Driven Latina. So what would you say to somebody who's maybe considering joining, but they're afraid of investing in themselves, or they're maybe afraid that they won't get transformation? Cande, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Tatiana.
I would there's a reason why you're even considering it in the first place. There's a reason why you're even listening to this podcast episode in the first place, So if you are curious about it, there's something in you that wants to invest in yourself. There's a part of you that believes in yourself. So why not choose to invest in yourself? When you do that, that just goes to show that you're putting those intentions out in the universe. And then from there, you'll start seeing more shifts and everything. Like, I'm into spirituality as well, So just like going into it with that intention, you'll start seeing that, you'll start seeing changes and shifts. And obviously, like, going into it also with the intention of, creating change and putting effort into it as well. But there's a part of you that's, even if there is a part of you thinking about it, why not do it? You have nothing to lose. The only thing that you're losing is that you're staying where you currently are right now. And I feel like that's worse than progressing.
Agreed. Tatiana, how about you?
Yeah, I would say that you can't do life alone. You cannot heal alone. You can't do business. You can't do anything alone. You need other people's validation and reassurance as much as, your own is important, right? It's also important to receive support from other people in whatever stage or level you're at in your life, whether it's, whether you're considering Courage Driven Latina for personal reasons or professional reasons, right? Like, you're going to need some kind of support, and it's better to have different perspectives and different people encouraging you and holding you accountable than just kind of you trying to do it alone and not really knowing the answers, not really knowing the questions to ask, not knowing like what the next steps are, right? Like, you need people in your life to support you around all of those things. So if you're considering CDL, I would just say, I would want to remind you that you can't do life alone. And this space, I think, has been really transformative for me in again, only the past 3 months, and just feeling more confident, feeling support from community. And again, just do it. Just make that step, take that leap, and I don't think that you'll regret it at all.
Amazing. Thank you both. We've been ending Courage Driven Latinas with card pullings lately, usually like group ones, but do you each want a card pulled?
Yes.
Okay. Cande, I'll start with you.
I love this. Thank you.
All right. Well, this one flew out, so we're going to choose this one for you. Or good. This is Rooster, and it says, remember laughter and joy. And I'm going to read the description. And for those of you listening, I'm pulling from the Animal Power deck. Every time I have a dream with a animal, I come to the deck and I'm like, is the animal in here? What's the message? Okay. Roosters may have a fierce side, but their medicine also brings laughter, joy, and a healthy relationship to your life. Have you ever heard a loud and proud rooster's crow that sounds just like laughing? It's an incredibly medicinal sound, and it reminds you that you should never dim your joy or exuberance for life for anyone. Surround yourself with friends who honor your unique energy. Healthy people will celebrate your happiness. They may even want to know what your secret is. I feel like that's totally CDL, right? We're all super vulnerable. If you're afraid of someone leaving or not liking you because you are joyful and thriving, consider whether that person is somebody worth your precious time and energy. Rooster reminds you of the vital importance of having relationships where you are embraced for being yourself without holding anything back. You should not have to hide your truth for anyone.
That resonates so much more than you guys will know. Thank you.
I'm glad. Okay. Tatiana, pulling one for you. All right. One flew out. Ooh. Komodo dragon. And it says, answer your wake-up call. Let's see what the description says. Okay, Komodo dragon. Komodo dragon arrives to wake you up and shake things up. If you have been complacent, just going through the motions or sleepwalking through life, Komodo dragon will help you snap out of monotony. The brute strength of this fantastic lizard will break through unhealthy situations and blast you with new creative inspiration. Ask Komodo Dragon to bless you with the power to take action. Meditate on how you can be more present, engaged, and alive. Once you feel heart-centered and clear on what it is that's best for you, ask Komodo Dragon to be there with you to shake things up for the better.
Interesting.
I think it's pushing you out of your comfort zone.
I think so. Yeah, for sure.
Take risks. Now's the time.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, you know what is so beautiful about this? Typically, when I have people on this podcast because of Courage Driven Latina, it's like the end of their time in the program, and it's almost like this sad, like, oh, it was so great. Thank you. Bye. But nope, I get to work with you two for another 9 months. How incredible is that? That's enough time to like birth a baby or birth a whole new business idea or like create whatever it is that you want. So thank you both so much for coming on the show. This was such a good podcast episode, and you two had no prep for this, so you both killed it. Thank you so much for coming on. Cande, can you tell us where people can find you and how it is that people can work with you?
Yes, so right now I am taking new clients for private coaching. You could find me on Instagram at siempre.evolving or my blog, which is one word, siempreevolving.com. And you can go to the link in my bio on my Instagram to schedule your free 45-minute clarity call. I help first-gen Latinas or any women with taking their lives to the next level, so if you have any goals in mind, this is a perfect time to work together because it's the end of the year. So I'm currently offering a 4-month package where we meet once a week. So by the time you could finish the year off strong, but also start the following year, 2024 on the right foot. So it'll be perfect. I also can help you start a blog if you want. I realized that I never really have offered that before, and I'm like, I've had mine for 2 years now. So if anyone who wants to start one, I'm the perfect person for that, because I could help you even find your niche and create your content calendar and have that foundation for you to create it and put yourself out there in that way. So yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. Tatiana, where can people connect with you, find you, and then how can people work with you?
So you can find me on Instagram. That's probably the best way to connect with me. My handle is tatiana.holistic.coaching. And the way that you can work with me is, so we have 2 options. So option 1 is drop-in somatic experiencing sessions. So somatic experiencing is a body-oriented approach to healing trauma. And if you're new to the somatic world, if you're interested in, if you're unsure if you want to work with me, doing a drop-in somatic experiencing session is the perfect way to get a feel for what it's like to work with me. And there's no commitment. You just sign up and it's a one-time only thing. And option 2 is holistic coaching. So I am accepting one-on-one private coaching clients, and if you're wanting to regulate your nervous system, I help you really target all of the areas in your life that are contributing to nervous system dysregulation. And I help you feel a little bit more confident and at peace and hopefully live outside of survival mode. So that's through holistic coaching. And my container is 4 months. So you can ask me all of your questions on Instagram. I also offer free coaching Fridays on Instagram. So follow me on there if you want some of my coaching around nervous system regulation.
Incredible. See, I told you all that I just have like the best clients in the world. They're changing so many lives and they're just incredible. Thank you both so much. We will have all of those links down below so that people can follow you as well as book calls with you. I will see you all on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. Make sure to visit theericacruz.com. That's Erica with a K, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can help this podcast grow by supporting me with an Apple Podcast rate and review. If you took anything away from this episode, I invite you to take a screenshot and share it on social media so that your favorite badass Latinas can also check it out. Be sure to tag me at the Erica Cruz. That's Erica with a K, because you know I want to see it. If you're ready to join the revolution and be a part of the Courage Driven Latina community, visit couragedrivenlatina.com to get more information and join the waitlist. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.